US President Joe Biden has called the MAGA movement the most extreme group in American history. The statement comes after convincing victory of Trump-backed candidate J.D. Vance in the Ohio primary race. Our Washington correspondent Annalise Nielsen joins us live now to pick through all of this. Annalise, this has caused shockwaves in DC.
It has, coming after the leak of this Roe versus Wade judgment. This has become a critical moment in that it has absolutely upended a lot of the assumptions heading into midterms. What we've seen today is a fiery statement from Joe Biden when he was asked about this leak from the Supreme Court on this likely judgment to overturn Roe versus Wade coming out. He then translated it into a response about the MAGA movement more broadly, which seems more emboldened now that one of the key endorsements of Donald Trump has gone ahead and done very well in their primary result in Ohio overnight.
What happens if you have a state changes the law saying that children who are LGBTQ can't be in classrooms with other children? Is that legit under the way that the decision is written? What are the next things that are going to be attacked? Because this MAGA crowd is really the most extreme political organization that's existed in American history.
The leaked draft opinion document, which suggests the Supreme Court is set to overturn a historic law legalising abortion, is authentic, according to US Chief Justice John Roberts. The decision would restrict American women from accessing abortion. And joining me live now is the former Chief of Staff to Speaker Nancy Pelosi, John Lawrence. John, good morning to you. Thanks for your time. It is only a draft, but in your view, will the Supreme Court overturn Roe v. Wade?
Well, there's certainly been speculation since President Trump named 3 judges, certainly one of them under controversial circumstances, that the established goal of the conservatives in the United States was to fill the Supreme Court with anti-abortion, anti-choice members in order to achieve this outcome. As you mentioned, this is a draft. It was drafted in February. Typically, these are confidential drafts that are written by the justice who is selected for writing the opinion and then circulated to the other justices. In this particular draft, it is a clear out-and-out repeal of the existing ruling back from 1972, Roe v. Wade. That could get changed before the final opinion is issued, probably in June, but it's not clear, and so people are reacting now to this leak. By the way, this leak is extremely unusual and extremely controversial. People on both sides of the opinion are very troubled by this breach of protocol that released this information prematurely.
Joining us live now is the Director for the University of Virginia's Centre for Politics, Larry Sabato. Larry, good morning to you. Thanks for your time this morning. We've got this breaking news that Caroline Kennedy is going to be heading to Australia. We had widely expected this to take place, but it's basically been inked this morning by the Senate. So what sort of an appointment is that, in your view?
Well, the Kennedy name is still magic in the Democratic Party and really in the country as a whole. The Kennedys haven't been all that active in politics in the past few years, but Caroline Kennedy has kept a hand in. She was one of the critical endorsements for Barack Obama against Hillary Clinton in 2008, and she's been ambassador to Japan. She got rave reviews in that position, so I would expect her to do a good job there.
Joining us now is the political analyst and professor at Curtin University, Joe Siracusa. Joe, good morning. Nancy Pelosi heading into Kiev, the highest profile American politician to go into the Ukrainian capital. What sort of an impact do you think that's going to have?
Good morning, Pete. It has an enormous impact. Nancy Pelosi, whatever else she is, she's third in line to the presidency of the United States. So she speaks for and represents a great deal of the American public. And she's also part of the Biden consensus that enough weapons can help Ukraine and that the war should be designed to now weaken Putin. And it looks like the diplomatic process is off the table for a while, as Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi and others have bet the farm that they could defeat Putin in the long run. And even the British Foreign Secretary is talking about a 10-year run in Ukraine. So, the ground has shifted a great deal, Pete. And I think the red lines have gotten a little closer to everybody in the last 10 days.
Well, US President Joe Biden has mocked his predecessor Donald Trump at the White House annual Correspondents' Dinner on the weekend. In his speech, he joked the Trump presidency was a horrible plague, suggesting he, along with the COVID pandemic, was to blame for the event's 6-year hiatus.
This is the first time the president attended this dinner in 6 years. It's understandable. We had a horrible plague followed by 2 years of COVID.
It was interesting watching him laugh quite heartily at some of the jokes that were cracked by the host Trevor Noah, including how things don't seem to be going that well under his watch. What did you make of it?
Well, I think the White House dinners have always been very interesting affairs. It's a chance for people to let their hair down and let the air out of their tires a little bit. You know, they can laugh at each other. President Obama had a good sense of humor. George W. Bush. President Trump, not so much, but I think those jokes are telling because, Biden has the time to participate with the press at a very important function. And most people probably don't understand that is a great milestone in the year of covering the White House. And I think it's an important kind of thing to attend. And as I say, this president, Pete, he knows he's doomed. All the polls say he's not going to win. He knows he's not going to win. In fact, 7 out of 10 Americans would like to see the end of him. So what he's doing is he's betting all of his money now that he's going to be remembered as a wartime president and a good one. I don't know if that's true or not.
Do you think he knows that he's doomed?
Oh, yes, sir. He can read. He has no trouble. I mean, he knows he's
He doesn't do a good job of reading the teleprompter or the auto cue.
No, he doesn't. But he knows he's gone because a lot of Democrats who are running in November don't want him near them. As a matter of fact, he's not getting a lot of return calls to the White House. Look, he's dead man walking. He's not going to win. America
has announced its sharpest interest rate rise in more than 20 years. The US Federal Reserve increased rates by 0.5%. This is the second rate hike this year, with more expected over the coming months. The most aggressive move in more than 2 decades. This is the markets here, by the way, live markets from Wall Street at the moment. So this is the most aggressive move in more than 2 decades. The change is aiming to stamp down soaring inflation. So the Nasdaq has tumbled 5% today. That is the sharpest plunge since 2020. The man who ran on stage at the Hollywood Bowl and attacked comedian Dave Chappelle will not face felony charges. The Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office made the announcement overnight. This comes almost 2 days after the attack. Officials say the evidence presented did not constitute felony conduct. Authorities are now considering possible misdemeanor charges. It's believed the 23-year-old is a fan of the comedian after releasing a song named Chappelle in 2020. Joining us live now to talk about this is comedian and podcast host of Irrational Fear, Dan Hillick. Dan, good morning to you. What did you make of that attack? There's a trend emerging, isn't there? And what is the state of stand-up comedy?
Yeah, well, I can tell you after talking with many of my stand-up colleagues, we are now looking into hiring several front rowers to join us on stage for gigs. I'm looking at personally investing in Brad Fittler, Andrew Johns, and Mal Meninga to come to every single gig I do, just to protect myself against getting trouble.
They're all over the hill, though, aren't they? Aren't you going to need some younger, fitter types?
No, those people have rugby league to play. These people don't have rugby league to play anymore. So they've got plenty of time to go to comedy gigs.
Solomon Islands Prime Minister Manasseh Sogavare has lashed out against Australia in Parliament, accusing it of undermining his government after the signing of its security deal with China. The Prime Minister told MPs the nation had been threatened by invasion by opponents of its security pact. The attack followed Scott Morrison's warning that a Chinese base in the Solomon Islands would be a red line for Australia. Mr Sogavare criticised Australia's attitude towards Solomon Islands as being its backyard.
We must do so as an independent sovereign nation, not as a group of black-faced people tucked away in the backyard of some countries, Mr. Speaker. By the way, sir, that term is offensive to us. Very offensive. In custom, backyard is where toilet is. It is where pig and chicken pens are located. It is where rubbish are collected and burned.
Joining us live is opposition MP Peter Kenaloria. Have you noticed anything in recent weeks, Peter, about Sogavare's language? Is he becoming more irritated? Is he becoming more aggressive? Is there any kind of new trend that you've noticed?
Yes, indeed. I noticed that in the responses to this current issue of the treaty. I think very much irritated. I think the fact that it was leaked is a big concern for him in terms of that particular episode. And the fact that it was leaked from within government by public servants is something that has irked him quite a bit, because there's been leaked documents for the past few months, and yet another one. So I think all of this is very much heightened his rhetoric in terms of what's been happening here in Solomons.
Okay. While Defence Minister Peter Dutton will announce plans to develop unmanned submarines and upgraded missiles to counteract China's influence in the Indo-Pacific. The Defence Force and defence tech company Anduril Australia will co-fund a $2 billion venture to produce 3 extra-large autonomous undersea vehicles over the next 3 years. The government also previously announced a $2 billion investment to purchase evolved Sea Sparrow missiles before the election was called. The first shipment of these weapons, which can also detect missiles at least 50 kilometres away, have already arrived in Australia for testing. Joining me live now is the Independent Senator Jackie Lambie for her thoughts on this. Senator, good morning. So the announcement, part of a huge deal that Peter Dutton's going to make later on today. What's your thoughts, first of all, on this?
Oh, hallelujah. Finally listening to what we've been telling you. Drones and cybersecurity, they are the future. So, and missiles, that's where we should be heading. The waste that has gone on these submarines, the time it's going to take to build them, they'll be ancient by then. This is where we should be heading. We are still miles behind. I'd love to see the detail. I'd love to see where it's going. Obviously, we haven't heard that yet. If the devil will be in the detail. How long are these going to take? Because we need them like yesterday.
Well, joining me live now is the Deputy Opposition Leader, Richard Marles. Richard, good to see you after a little while. Jason Clare has said this morning that homeowners under your scheme who die can only pass that home on to their children if they meet eligibility criteria. If they don't, if the son or daughter earns more than $90,000 a year, that house will be sold, with the government taking its share. Is that not a death tax?
No, it's not. That's not right at all. And in fact, the child in that circumstance would have the opportunity of buying the government out so that they own the home outright, which is the same as if the people themselves during the course of their life no longer qualify for the property. I mean, this is a scheme which is designed for people on low and modest incomes who really face a lifetime of rental right now, which gives them a genuine option of owning their own home. Now, if during the course of their life they acquire wealth, which means they themselves no longer qualify for the scheme, well, then in that circumstance, they would need to be buying out the government, and that's fair. So it puts them on the same footing as anyone else who has means. And that's the way it would apply in relation to their children. So children who have means, want to keep the house in the family, that can be done.
Well, let's go live now to the Finance Minister, Simon Birmingham. Minister, good to see you. Thanks for your time this morning. So on to Labor's policy. We'll start there. We just heard from Richard Marles. And what it appears that is if someone dies who bought a home under Labor's scheme and their children don't qualify, the property will be sold. Your response to that?
Pete, these are startling revelations from Richard Marles about Labor's policy. The government could see that there were many holes in Labor's proposal to co-own Australians' homes with them. But what Richard Marles has admitted this morning is that if you die and your kids earn a few $1,000s extra, Labor will force the sale of the family home at that point. But also, incredibly, what he said during the course of the interview was that if you yourself earn a few $1,000s extra under this deal of joint home ownership with a Labor government, then you'll have to suddenly come up with potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay the government back. Now, these just aren't feasible ways for Australians to get into the home ownership market. The government has a clear and sensible policy that helps many more Australians than Labor is proposing, $50,000 a year under our policy, to be able to enter the market in a sensible way, fully checked by banks, but also to ensure they get to own 100% of their own home, not Labor's proposal to have Mr Albanese sitting at the kitchen table, and now it seems that Mr Albanese will be sitting there when the will gets read too.
Well, Australians living on the East Coast could soon fly non-stop to London and New York as Qantas looks to expand its ultra-long-haul routes. The airline will order more than 150 new Airbus jets later on today when it's announced, its largest in its 102-year history, as it looks towards launching record-breaking direct flights from Sydney to London and New York. It's a lot of time to be airborne, isn't it? Qantas had intended to launch the flights called Project Sunrise early next year, but of course the pandemic put those plans on hold. A new Airbus A350-1000 featuring the Qantas logo has travelled from Perth to Sydney for the announcement, which is expected at 8:30 this morning. It'll be live here on Sky. The purchasing of the new jets will also take the airline towards its target of net zero emissions by 2050. Borrowers are being warned the official cash rate may reach 2.5% before the end of next year after the Reserve Bank lifted interest rates for the first time in almost 12 years. Joining us live now is the Executive Chairman of Yellow Brick Road Home Loans, Mark Burris. Mark, good morning to you. So the honeymoon period is well and truly over now. So how much does this and many more expected rate rises change the game for borrowers and lenders such as yourself?
Okay, well, let me just give you a quick example. For every 0.5% increase in the interest rate, so we just recently increased by 0.25%. So for every time that happens twice, very 0.5% increase in the interest rates, lenders will lend a borrower around 5% less. So if last week I would lend you $500,000, this week, and if this week there was a 0.5% increase in the interest rate, I'm only going to lend you $480,000. That means if your deposit is a fixed amount, you go to the auction or whatever it is however you're going to buy it, you've got $20,000 less to spend in buying that property unless somehow you can increase your deposit. So for every 1%, it's a $40,000 decrease. So borrowers basically will be able to borrow less because when we make the assessment, the calculation of how much we lend you, we assess on the current rates.
Okay.